Hi everyone. Welcome to the Town Hall Recap, my summary of this year's special town meeting, when the members come back in session to discuss and vote on any articles that came up or were revised since the annual town meeting in May, but which are mostly too time sensitive to wait until next May. The first night of special town meeting went more smoothly than I've come to expect. Both moderator Bob Mullen and deputy moderator Carmel Drews did an excellent job keeping us on track by holding fast to the 2 technical questions per speaker rule and not allowing further questions during pro and con debate. The biggest debate of night 1 was about the Fano Drive land swap, so let me give you some background on that before I tell you the results. Fano Drive is what they call a paper road, in that it's on the maps, but is not paved or developed in any way. When the working group for the new school was in its early stages, it was clear to them that acquiring and paving at least a portion of Fano Drive would be the best and cheapest way to arrange a driveway for the new school. However, because that land is privately owned, and they didn't have the authority to negotiate land acquisition with the owners, they were forced to design an alternative entryway and emergency exit for the new school that did not use Fano Drive. That plan involved building a pair of bridges through wetlands and over waterways, which is obviously more complicated and expensive than just paving a road. That's the plan that MSBA approved, and that the citizens of Stoughton voted to approve a debt exclusion for. Once our town approved that plan, the owners of Fano Drive, DAD LLC, expressed interest in a zero-cost land swap, which town officials who actually do have the authority to negotiate such things were then able to arrange. The deal is for the town to swap a parcel of land that abuts DAD LLC's property from the side and rear for the Fano Drive land, keeping a buffer zone between the company's land and its neighbors. The swap is for identical square footage of land, so nobody's being ripped off here. We get a better, cheaper, more practical driveway for the new school, and DAD LLC gets to add to their property in ways that will serve them better than an unpaved Fano Drive. The neighbors still get a buffer zone between their land and the company's, so nobody ends up looking out their kitchen window into an ugly parking lot. Win-win, everybody's happy. But wait! The school building plan we actually got approval for, that MSBA is actually helping us pay for, doesn't use Fano Drive. We may have the right to trade parcels of land, but that won't do us any good if we're not allowed to use that land as a driveway for the school. To solve this problem, the town had to go to MSBA to ask for permission to alter their school plan to use Fano Drive as its driveway instead of building the bridges, and MSBA said we had to get it approved by Bond Council too, since the rest of the money for the school is coming mostly as a loan. That process involved adding specific language to town meeting's article, allowing the land trade to be incorporated into the already approved plans for the new school. Still with me? Okay, so we've got a deal to get Fano Drive, we've got language allowing us to then use Fano Drive, and we have buy-in from all the stakeholders. We just need town meeting to pass 2 articles. Article 13, which lets us accept the Fano Drive land for free and use it in redesigning the school driveway, and Article 14, letting us give away the land that we're trading for it. There are 2 valid ways to view the price tag associated with these articles. The first way to look at it is to say they're completely free. 0 funds are transferred in any direction, equal parcels of land are traded for each other, end of story. The other way to look at it is that these articles save us $2.5 million and about 6 months of work, because it's that much cheaper and easier to pave a driveway instead of building driveways and bridges through wetlands and over waterways. Well, apparently there was a secret third way to view these articles, because Dave Lurie introduced an amendment removing the language that would incorporate the land swap into the approved school plan. The effect would be to swap land for Fano Drive, but then still have to keep the school design unchanged, build those wetlands bridges, and save no money and no time. To his credit, that was apparently not Dave's intention. He thought that the fact this language had been approved by Bond Council and MSBA meant that it secretly wasn't going to be free, but would somehow increase the bond and therefore the expense to taxpayers just by being more land, despite costing nothing up front. Just to be clear, that isn't how anything works. If I take out a loan to buy a used car, and then the dealer says they'll put in a new stereo for free, then adding a new stereo won't increase the loan I have to take or the monthly payments, even though it alters the original terms of the sale. In exactly the same way, adding a free extra parcel of land to the school design we're borrowing money for isn't going to increase the size of the loan. It's just going to free us up to use an updated design that's better and cheaper. I don't think Dave was intentionally trying to force us to build the worse and more expensive school driveway. I think he genuinely misunderstood the situation and why the language of the articles had to be worded the way it was. The trouble is that when you take the stance that town officials are always untrustworthy and trying to pull a fast one on the taxpayer, you end up unable to accept any explanation of their logic as valid. Thankfully, of the 128 members present at special town meeting, only 20 supported Dave's amendment, so the original language was passed without alteration, and the new school will no longer need to involve building expensive bridges. Fano Drive will be used as a driveway and access point, and if the town later chooses to pave the second half of it and make it a proper street, we will have the option to do so. Now, I don't mean to imply that this article was the only meaningful thing that happened on the first night of special town meeting. We also passed a bunch of important articles paying for continued water main improvements, road work, renovating town buildings for ADA compliance, and more. We passed an article allocating the funds needed to enter into a new 3-year collective bargaining agreement with the union representing our Department of Public Works, and even caught a pair of typos in the agreement that could have caused problems for those town employees without correction. Several town meeting members spoke eloquently in favor of the accessibility upgrades, and you may want to view SMAC's footage of the night just to see those statements. We voted to purchase 5 new voting machines to match the other ones we have, and did it without even discussing any voting machine conspiracy theories. It was a good night of good work, and I was proud to be part of it. You can be part of it too. All you have to do is head down to the clerk's office at Town Hall and ask for the papers to let you run for town meeting. You have until February 17th to gather just 15 signatures, 20 to be on the safe side, to get on the April ballot. It's not as hard as you think. The second and final night of special town meeting had more fireworks and controversy than night one. While we had an assortment of uncontroversial articles, such as zoning changes, accepting donated land, and rescinding appropriations for borrowing that never ended up being necessary, we also had some controversial articles, most notably appropriating funds for the demolition of the State Theater. The presentation for that article was given by Stoughton's fire chief and building inspector, who explained why the building had been condemned and needed to be demolished. Their presentation was extremely convincing. The State Theater has no sprinkler system, no fire warning system, irreparable structural damage, and even its emergency exit doors are a potential hazard. It's also structurally attached to the buildings next to it, which would be destroyed too if a fire broke out. The fire chief pointed to 3 fires that had previously burned down theaters built on the same model and in the same area, as far away as Portland, Oregon, and as near to us as Brockton. In Brockton, he said embers the size of footballs had been blown by the wind as far as 2 blocks away. A fire at the State Theater would not only risk the lives of Stoughton firefighters and residents, it could destroy a big section of the downtown area. Town manager Tom Coulter explained that the owner has been very slow to respond and even to get estimates for the price of demolition, which is why appropriating the funds for the town to demolish this condemned building itself was necessary, proving that if the owner doesn't have the building demolished, we will likely spur him to action, as he will want the best price for demolition. If we end up paying for the demo, the town will put a lien on his property for the full amount and begin charging interest. So to be clear, that money for the demolition would come back to us. Even if the owner didn't pay up and we instead got the property through foreclosure, it is worth well over $1 million and could easily be sold at a profit. I don't know if you've looked at Stoughton real estate listings recently, but my cute little 1,200 square foot Cape has a Zillow estimate of over $500,000 now. An empty theater-sized parcel of prime commercial real estate right in the heart of town, with a commuter rail in walking distance, would sell for a lot more than just double my house. But it wasn't enough simply to hear that the building's a fire hazard and a death trap, that its demolition is necessary and we would take no financial loss if we ended up paying for it. People also had to say goodbye to their memories of the place and to the dream of keeping it. This town raised hundreds of thousands in donations to the Friends of the State Theater in the hopes of restoring it to its former glory, and no one is happy that it's come to this. Over a dozen town meeting members rose to ask technical questions, and just as many came up for pro and con debate. John Stagnoni came up to give a statement on behalf of Friends of the State Theater, but because he is no longer a town meeting representative, he was told that he would have to wait until after all members had spoken. This was just the second article of the night, and it had the potential to take all night. After the many technical questions and 4 pro and con statements, I tried to move the question to cut off debate and get to the vote. At that point, discussion of this one article had taken about an hour. If you watch the smack footage of the October 29th special town meeting, you will see that the presentation by the fire chief begins at minute 1635, and I moved the question 59 minutes later at timestamp 1 hour, 15 minutes, and 46 seconds. But a sizable portion of the body still felt that more people should have the opportunity to give statements, and the move to cut off debate failed, falling short of the needed 2/3 by some 11 votes. 9 statements later, and with new speakers still rising to speak, Phil Connors of Precinct 2 moved the question again, and this time the body agreed to cut off debate. Of course, town meeting being what it is, that wasn't the end of it. We had a point of information from Bob Cohn to clarify whether a yes vote would mean yes to demolishing the theater or to keeping it, and Greg Pokraka raised a point of information to ask why John Stagnoni hadn't been allowed to speak. The answer was straightforward. Elected representatives get priority at town meeting, and if the body votes to cut off debate and move forward even before all its members are done speaking, then that's that. John has thankfully had other outlets to get his perspective heard, including a very active Facebook presence. Moving on, we took up the question of whether to buy the property at 30 Porter Street in order to incorporate that land into the redesign of the town hall exterior, allowing for some 16 extra parking spaces. This may seem frivolous to many people who don't often have business at town hall, but it is actually an accessibility issue. There are often 2 or 3 committee hearings going on simultaneously, and the current lack of town hall parking has often forced people to park down the street and walk significant distances to reach the building. For me, that might just mean a little extra exercise, but for a lot of people, it's not just a minor inconvenience. The original article asked town meeting to approve up to $250,000 for the purchase of 30 Porter, but Bob Cohn had introduced an amendment to increase that amount to $295,000. I presume that was to bring it in line with what the seller had said he was willing to accept. There was barely any debate over the amendment itself, which was quickly adopted, but there turned out to be great resistance to that price point. By the time we got to the vote, which as a land acquisition required a 2/3 majority, only just over half the voters were in favor, and the article went down to defeat. Now, as I learned in May with the noise ordinance, town meeting rules allow someone who voted against a defeated article to reintroduce it after all articles have been voted on. So I'm going to skip ahead to the end of the night to tell you that Dave Lurie reintroduced the article, but in its original language, authorizing only up to $250,000 for the purchase. The article then passed fairly easily, reflecting the fact that members considered it a fairer price. The owner will now have to decide whether he agrees or thinks he can do better. My understanding is that the house is in tear-down condition, so it's not clear to me which is the better financial option. I guess it'll depend on whether there are any other buyers. Our other articles for the night were important and, as it turned out, fairly uncontroversial. As I mentioned before, we accepted a donation of 5 parcels of land on Mill Street, giving up on modest tax revenues in return for the ability to redesign the curve to make the street safer and more drivable. We rescinded unissued borrowing and allocated some money to preserve the Bird Street historic site and to improve safety at the public schools with fencing. That wraps up my summary of this year's special town meeting. I want to remind you again that you can join this decision-making body and not just know what's going on, but also affect it. As I've said on my show, Stoughton Politics with this guy, getting involved with town politics has made me understand that we still have agency in a world that so often feels like it's spiraling out of control. You don't have to be an internet cynic yelling, "Do something!" at elected officials. Get yourself down to town hall, gather your handful of signatures, and I'll see you in May.